Now, when it comes to tackles for loss,
by Riverside FM.
well, that is a record that J.J. Watt has and probably will hold for, I'm not sure how long, could be forever. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm your host, Ernie Jennings, and we look back at the teams from the NFL from 2024. We're going to go through every team. We've been in the AFC. We're going to stick with that before we move on to the NFC. We wrapped up the AFC East and North, and now we're going to check out the AFC South. And as usual, we'll start with the first place team, which is the Houston Texans. So the Houston Texans finished the season with a record of 10-7. At home, they were 5 wins, 3 losses, and on the road, 5-4, and in the division, 5-1, which is where they really held suit. So as far as the team records go for the Houston Texans, I'm only going back to 2002 when the franchise began. The Houston Oilers, who began in 1960, they moved to Tennessee in 1997 and started playing there. So for 1997 and 1998, the Houston Oilers changed their name to the Tennessee Oilers. But then 1999, they became the Tennessee Titans. So we will be talking about them as well, since they are also in the AFC South. But coming back to the Houston Texans, how do the Houston Texan players of 2024 stand in relation to the greatest Texans players of all times? We're going to find that out right now on this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So we'll begin with the coaches. Gary Kubiak has the record with 61 wins for the Houston Texans. He did that from 2006 to 2013. Bill O'Brien was second with 52 from 2014, picked up right after Gary Kubiak to 2020, I'm sorry. He had 52. And D'Amico Ryan's current coach has 20 wins. So he's got a few years. He can stick with the team before he moves up this list. 61 wins is not that many, so if D'Amico Ryans can continue to have quality teams, do some quality coaching, he should ultimately be the all-time winningest coach for the Houston Texans. So that's your coaches. Let's begin now with the career stats, and we'll look at the passing. As far as yards go, the all-time leader is Matt Schaub, who from 2007 to 2013 had 23,221 yards. Deshaun Watson was second with 14,539. Currently, C.J. Stroud is fourth, not just behind, but he's behind David Carr, who's third. So C.J. Stroud's going to need another 2 years before he cracks the second and third spot. David Carr has 13,391. So even a good season by C.J. Stroud's not going to get him there, but 2 more seasons, and he should start moving up this list. And if he continues to be the career quarterback for the Texans, shouldn't have a problem really of someday passing Matt Schaub as all-time leader as far as yards go. When we're looking at touchdowns, Matt Schaub is also the leader with 124. Deshaun Watson, in a brief period, really from 2017 to 2020, had 104 touchdowns. That's impressive. C.J. Stroud, again, behind David Carr. C.J. Stroud has 43. David Carr has 59. Now, that is a number that C.J. Stroud should be able to pass this year in a single season. I would expect him to get at least 16 touchdown passes. And then give him a few years before he moves up toward the number 1 and 2 spots. So C.J. Stroud is a player we're going to watch throughout the season and see how he does as far as Houston Texans records go. But he's one to watch. It'll be fun to watch the Texans as far as that goes. Now, when it comes to interceptions, Matt Schaub led the team with 78. David Carr was second with 65. And CJ Stroud is sixth on this list, but he's only got 17. So, which is really good. Of course, it's not that long of a time period, a couple of years, but still long time before he moves up this list, which is one, as I always say, that you don't want to be on at the top anyway. So those are your interception leaders. Sacks, David Carr, I remember this. He just was sacked all the time, it seemed like. So from 2002 to 2006, he was sacked 249 times. That's just too many times in that time period. And when you look at the percentage rate, he was sacked at a 10.7% rate. So when you compare that, say, to CJ Stroud, who's fourth with 90 sacks, he's sacked at an 8% rate. I mean, that's not low, but 10.7% of the time is extremely high. It's just not good for your quarterback, and it proved itself out with David Carr as far as just the sacks. I think it damaged him as far as his whole career goes. So that's your leading quarterbacks. Let's move on to the rushers. Look at some of the running backs. The all-time leading running back is Arian Foster from 2009 to 2015, had 6,472 yards, which is quite a big lead over Dominic Williams, who from 2003 to 2005 had 3,195. Those are your top two. Dameon Pierce is next on this list. Well, not next, but he's the highest current player. He's eighth with 1,648 yards. So not many. I fully expect if Joe Mixon's healthy and plays well to move as far as fifth all time. He gets 1,000-yard season. He'll move all the way up to fifth all time for the Houston Texans. So Joe Mixon right now is 13th with just 1,000 yards and 1,016 yards. So to say he can move all the way up to fifth doesn't say a lot. But right now Arian Foster's holding steady. There's no one going to catch him as far as career rushing yards go. When looking at TDs, again, it's Arian Foster has 54 touchdowns. Dominic Williams again with 23, and then Deshaun Watson had 17. He's third all time for the Houston Texans as far as rushing TDs go. Joe Mixon's already seventh with 11. So that's one season. He had 11. You figure he gets another 11, gets 12. He's tied Dominic Williams for second all time. So he's definitely going to move probably at least into the third position ahead of Deshaun Watson at a minimum. So we'll see how that goes. Dameon Pierce is 11th all time with 8. Those are your top two. Of course, Nick Chubb's on the team now, so we'll just see how that factors in. Right at this point, we don't know, but we'll see how it goes with that. Moving on to the best receivers for the Houston Texans, and it's by far Andre Johnson, who from 2003 to 2014 had 13,597 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, who's still playing, but not with the Houston Texans, he had from 2013 overlapped 1 year with Andre Johnson to 2019 had 8,602 yards. Those are your top two. Very impressive. 13,594 is a good number, and in fact, it's not quite good enough to get him into the, as far as yards go, into the top 12, but very close. That's just for the Houston Texans, but very good as far as the yards go. Looking at tight ends, as far as receiving yards go. Owen Daniels is third all time as far as receivers, and he's a tight end. He had 4,617. He's the leading tight end um, for the Houston Texans as far as yards go. And then as far as running backs go, you have Arian Foster again, who from 2009 to 2015 had 2,268 yards. So those are your top wide tight end and wide receivers and running backs. Current players on this list, Dalton Schultz as far as tight ends go, and has 1,167 yards. That's the best you have right now. So he can move up the list a little bit, even with a halfway decent season. He can possibly move in top 15 for sure. He's only a couple spots away. He's 17th now. But we'll see how he does. We'll watch him as he moves up this list. So that's your tight ends. That's your receivers as far as yards go. Looking at the receptions, Andre Johnson, from, like I said, 2003 to 2014, had 1,012 receptions. That's very good. In his career, he ended up with 1,062, which puts him 11th all time as far as receptions go. So you can see that all but 50 of receptions were with the Houston Texans. So the majority of his career was with them. He only played 2 more years on 2 other teams and before he was out of the league. But a good player, very good player. So he leads the team. Currently, Nico Collins, who's an impressive wide receiver, he's 7th with 218 receptions. And if he can stay healthy for the entire year and get at least 100 receptions, he could move up as far as 4th. Kevin Walter, who played from 2006 to 2012, had 326 receptions. So there's a huge drop off after Andre Johnson to DeAndre Hopkins, who's 2nd with 632, to Owen Daniels, who has 385. So a huge drop off. So Nico Collins, who's going to be with this team, it seems unlikely, even when he comes up for a contract, his 2nd contract, that he's not going to stay with the team. I'd be shocked if they don't keep him. He's just too good of a player not to. He could definitely be the one person who could take out Andre Johnson if he can stay with the team for his entire career. But we'll see how that goes. That's your receptions, your yards. As far as TDs go, Andre Johnson again has 64 touchdown receptions. DeAndre Hopkins has 54. And as far as tight ends, Owen Daniels is 3rd, and he has 29. Nico Collins is 6th already with 18. So he gets 7 receptions. He's already 4th all time. But it'll be years before he can catch Andre Johnson. But he's the one guy that we'll be watching to see if he can do that. As far as running backs go, again, it's Arian Foster, who had 14 touchdown receptions in his career with the Houston Texans. That's your leading players as far as touchdowns, receptions, and yards go. Moving over to the defense, as far as career goes, and looking at interceptions, the leader with only 17 is Jonathan Joseph from 2011 to 2019. You see much bigger numbers. It's one of the reasons I say the NFC for last is you have teams that have been around for 100 years or longer, and overall their whole entire history. But you have teams that have been around for so long, their leaders and stuff like interceptions is going to be much greater than 17. But Jonathan Joseph is the number 1 person. Derek Stingley Jr. has 11. So, and he's only been on the team from 2022 to 2024. So definitely somebody who probably will break this record of only 17, and it won't take him that long. He could do it this year, a good year, we'll see. But 2 years maybe at the most, and he should be the number 1. this will be a category will be interesting to watch and move up and through this list of players. All right, let's continue with the tackles for loss leaders career-wise for the Houston Texans, and that would be J.J. Watt from 2011 to 2020, had 172 tackles for loss. Quite an impressive number. All time, he's number 2 as far as that goes. He has 195 all time. Only Terrell Suggs with 202 tops him. So those are your top 2 all-time leaders in tackles for loss, and he had obviously 172 out of the 195 were with the Houston Texans. Currently, there's a few players that are on this list, but farther down, Will Anderson's 14th. He has 26, but he's only been on the team a couple years. And then you have Daniel Hunter, just last year had 17. First year had 17 tackles for loss. So nobody's anywhere approaching J.J. Watt. The number 2 player was Whitney Merciless from 2012 to 2021. So playing right there along with J.J. Watt, but he had 72 tackles for loss. So big drop from J.J. Watt to Merciless. So you could see easily one of these new players making it all the way up to number 2 in the next few years. So that'll be something for us to watch. Looking at the last category as far as defense career-wise, J.J. Watt from 2011 to 2020 had 101 sacks, leads the team. Whitney Merciless, again, second. He has 57. Will Anderson already has 18. So a couple of years, he's got 18. So we'll see how that goes. And then you have Daniel Hunter. First year had 12. So that's good. So we'll watch that and see how that goes. So that's your leading career players. Now let's look at single season records and see how that goes. We'll go back up to the quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson has the record for most passing yards in a single season for the Houston Texans with 4,823. That's a good, decent number. Not quite making it in the top 15, but close. Matt Schaub, 2 years back-to-back in 2009 and 2010, the next numbers with 4,770. And there's a drop-off to 4,370. C.J. Stroud, in 2023, his first year, had 4,108 yards. And then just this last year, he had 3,727. So a little drop-off for him. Obviously, he's somebody that could move up into this ranks. 4,823 yards is the all-time Houston Texans record. It is a good, decent number. Only 15 players have had 5,000 yards or more. So might be a little difficult for C.J. Stroud. We'll see how it goes. He's got some great receivers, especially with Collins. So it's a possibility, but we'll see. When we're looking at touchdowns, Deshaun Watson, only player for the Houston Texans to have more than 30. He had 33 touchdown passes in 2020. So I do think this is something C.J. Stroud could pass. Though he hasn't really gotten that close yet, but I do think it's a possibility. He placed 6th right now with 20 in 2023. He had 23 touchdown passes. Last year, which put him at 8th, he had 20. So really a little more improvement on the percentage of touchdown passes. He could move up there and possibly pass Deshaun Watson. 33 is not an extraordinarily high number. So decent number, but not out of the range. It's something C.J. Stroud couldn't pass at some point. So we'll watch that this season and see how close he can possibly come. When it comes to interceptions in a single season, Brock Osweiler, supposed to be great, but turned out not to be. 2016 had 16 interceptions. That's the worst that Houston Texans ever done. Matt Schaub in 2009 had 15 several times. He had several players had 15. Davis Mills, and David Carr. They're up there. C.J. Stroud last year had 12. That was of his seasons. That's his first. He had kind of went backwards a little bit, but we'll see why when we get to looking at some other stats. Or actually, this next stat I think will tell us why, possibly. The all-time record holder for sacks in a season is David Carr, not only for the Houston Texans, but for the NFL as a whole. And I was talking about this career-wise. This just ruined him, I think. But he has the top two numbers here for Houston Texans. Let's see here. In 2002, he was sacked 76 times. And then in 2005, he was sacked 68 times. That's an extraordinary amount of totals. The all-time record is 76, held by David Carr. Randall Cunningham in 1986 was sacked 72 times. And then you have David Carr again with 68. So when we're looking at receiving numbers, quarterback numbers, I should say, rather, and we're looking at the sacks, and I'll have to go back on this a little bit, but last year, Caleb Williams had 68 times that he was sacked, which tied him with David Carr for third all time. So he led the NFL last year. C.J. Stroud, though, was second with 52 sacks. That needs to be improved. And I don't know, though they've changed out some of their offensive linemen, I don't know that they've actually improved their offensive line. But we'll see. But 52 times being sacked is not something you want to see your star quarterback being treated like. So that's not good. And in fact, it's quite a difference. In 2023, he was sacked 38 times. So from 38 times to 52, that's the wrong way to be going, as far as I'm sure he feels. And not helpful for Houston Texans fans to see their quarterback being sacked 52 times. So when we're looking back at yards, like I said, C.J. Stroud had 4,108 yards passing this past season. That put him at, that's wrong. He had actually 3,727 yards last season. That was the 2023 that I'm talking about. But see, that dropped him all the way down to 15th as far as yards go. A little bit of an off season for him. And then when it comes to the touchdowns, he had 20, which put him at 17. So he's middle of the pack in yards, touchdowns. Not somewhere you really want to be, as far as he goes. And then interceptions. See, this is a problem. He had 12 last year, which puts him near the top. Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins each had 16. So C.J. Stroud with 12. A bit of an off year. So we'll see how it goes with him this year as they move into 2025. When we're looking at running backs, Arian Foster has the top two spots. In 2010, he had 1,616 yards. And then in 2012, he had 1,422 yards. In fact, he holds four of the top 5 spots as far as rushing goes for the Houston Texans. Last year, Joe Mixon had 1,016 to join Houston Texans who have rushed for 1,000 yards or more. Arian Foster has 4 of the top 10 1,000-yard rushers for the Houston Texans. But when we're looking at as far as how his 1,016 yards did in this past season, that only placed him at 15th. So just like the quarterback, Stroud, he's right in the middle of the pack with 1,016 yards. Saquon Barkley had 2,005, so he topped the NFL last season as far as yards go, basically double Joe Mixon. But we'll see. Joe Mixon didn't play 17 games. He played 14. So possibly, well, not possibly, he would definitely have more than 1,000 yards. So hopefully for the Houston Texans fans, he plays an entire season, but we'll have to see how Nick Chubb fits into this thing as well. Maybe and most likely, he's just a nice backup guy, and we'll just have to see how Nick Chubb looks after the amount of injuries he's had to fight through. When we're looking at touchdowns all time, Arian Foster again had 16 in 2010, and then he had 15 in 2012. That's the top two. Now, last year, Joe Mixon was impressive, even in 14 games. He had 11 touchdowns rushing, which put him fourth all time as far as the Houston Texans go. Last season, Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, and James Cook all had 16 touchdowns rushing. And then Joe Mixon tied for 11th as far as rushing touchdowns go. So those are your top rushers. When we're going to receiving, looking at the receivers, as far as receptions go, this is where DeAndre Hopkins ties Andre Johnson for the most receptions in a single season. They each had 115. DeAndre Hopkins did it in 2018, and Andre Johnson did it in 2008. That's your top two spots. This is a record that obviously, if Nico Collins can stay healthy, he can break, I think. Last season, he had only 68 receptions, but he only played 12 games. So that would not put him on a pace to actually break that record, but we'll see how that goes. But he's the best option they have right now as far as that goes. In 2023, Nico Collins had 80 receptions, so it was a drop off. But that's, he was injured, he missed some games, so hopefully he can play an entire season, stay healthy, and we'll see how it looks. Now, how did that compare this past season? Well, obviously, when you have only 68 receptions, that's not going to place you too high. That put Nico Collins at 34th as far as that goes. But he still led the team in receptions. So he definitely needs to be out there on the field. When we're looking at yards now, Andre Johnson has the top two spots, just beating out DeAndre Hopkins. 2012, Andre Johnson had 1,598 yards, and then in 2008, he had 1,575. DeAndre Hopkins in that year, 2018, had 1,572, so just 3 yards behind him. They were very similar in yardage, yards per reception. Interesting. Now, as far as 2024 goes, again, Nico Collins had 1,000 yards. So despite only having 68 receptions, he was able to have a 1,000-yard season. Now, when it comes to comparing that to other players, that still puts him down at only 22nd. There were 24 receivers who had 1,000 or more yards. That's a lot, really, when you think about it. 24. You have 32 teams, and 24 players are already getting at least 1,000 yards. Somebody like Detroit Lions had 2 players, but it's a lot of players. Jamar Chase led the NFL by a decent margin with 1,708 yards. So that was your leader. And then when we're looking at touchdowns all-time receiving, now that DeAndre Hopkins has the top 3 spots, that is one difference between him and Andre Johnson. In 2017, DeAndre Hopkins had 13 touchdown receptions. That's the record for the Texans. And when you're looking and comparing that with this past season, Nico Collins was 12th. Again, only 12 games he started, played, had 7 touchdowns. So get him a full season, we'll see what goes on. But this past season in the NFL, Jamar Chase again had 17 touchdowns. Nice amount. Terry McLaurin had 13. And with 7, Nico Collins was tied for 21st. So middle of the pack to kind of numbers, but he's definitely better than a middle of the pack wide receiver. When we're looking at receptions as far as tight ends go, unlike some teams, the Houston Texans dominate with wide receivers. It isn't down till 18th spot where you see Owen Daniels. Also in 2008 had 70 receptions. So you had in 2008 Andre Johnson with 115, and you had Owen Daniels with 70. He's your top tight end. And then as far as running backs go, Dominic Williams in 2004 had 68 receptions. That's the leading running back as far as receptions go. And when we're looking at tight ends and running backs as far as yards go, Owen Daniels again has the most with 862, which he did also in 2008. And then when you're looking at running backs, you have to go quite a ways down the list. They're really to Arian Foster in 2011 had 617 receiving yards to add with his rushing yards. So those are your top two tight ends and running backs when it comes to receiving. All right, that's your receiving. Let's check out the defense. All right, when it comes to the defense, let me get that up here real quick. When it comes to the defense, all time for the Houston Texans as far as interceptions go, Marcus Coleman in 2003 had 7. That is the best that they've had. When it comes to current players, Kalen Bullock last season had 5. So he's somebody, he had 5. So it's a possibility that he could break that record. 7's not that many. I mean, the record is 14 in a single season by Night Train Lane way back in 1952. And in fact, in the top 12, there's nobody any earlier than 1980. So it tells you, as far as interceptions go, it's not something that a player in this era is going to probably ever break. But he could set their own team record. Kalen Bullock could. Since he had 5, it's possible he can get to 7. Wouldn't put it past him. So when it comes to comparing that to the NFL, with 5, Kirby Joseph for Detroit had 9 interceptions. But with 5, Derek Stingley and Caleb Bullock both had 5 this past season for Houston, which put them at 6th, tie for 6th. So those are your top 2. And I didn't mention Derek Stingley, but yeah, Derek Stingley actually had 5 last year too in 2023. So you got 2 good ball hawks there as far as interceptions go. So we'll see how those 2 battle it out. One of them could be the all-time leader in interceptions for the Houston Texans. We'll see. Now, when it comes to tackles for loss, well, that is a record that J.J. Watt has and probably will hold for, I'm not sure how long, could be forever. He had, in 2012, he had 39 tackles for loss. That is the most ever in the NFL. The second position, which he holds twice, is 29 in 2014, and in 2015 he had 29. So to have 39 tackles for loss in a single season and the next best is 29 is incredible to see. So that puts J.J. Watt at the top of not only the Houston Texans, but the entire NFL. And that 39 number, as far as tackles for loss, is just incredible. And when you look at this past season, Myles Garrett led the NFL with 22 tackles for loss. So didn't make the top 10. And like I said, J.J. Watt holds the top 3 spots, so nowhere near the numbers that pretty impressive Now, Daniel Hunter led Houston with 17, so not bad, but which put him at 7th, but 17 in comparison to the all-time Houston Texan record and the all-time record period. Now, when we're looking at sacks, again, we have J.J. Watt as far as sacks go. Let me look at that. J.J. Watt in 2014 and in 2012 had 20 and a half sacks. That's the record for the Houston Texans. Now that places him tied for 13th on the unofficial sacks list and then 8th on the official. The difference is that from 1960 till 1982, the sack records are considered unofficial based on the fact that the stats weren't tracked the same way they were starting in 1982. So what they've done is they went back and watched film and tracked the sacks that way. So you have a little bit of a difference between the unofficial list if you start in 1960 to the official list. But either way, J.J. Watt is on there, whether it's in the 8th position or in the 13th position. He's in the top of the NFL all-time as far as sacks go. But he's your leader. So when you're looking at sacks this past season, Daniel Hunter had 12. Now, Trey Hendrickson led the NFL with 17 and a half. Hunter was 6th with his 12, actually tied for 5th. So not too bad, but we'll see how that goes. But Will Anderson had 11. He was the next best Houston Texan. So those are your top Texans. So a couple of good players. When you have 2 players having more than 10 sacks on the same team, that's always a good thing as far as your defense goes. So that is a wrap for the Houston Texans. So next up will be the 2nd place Indianapolis Colts from the AFC South. So even though AFC South isn't considered very competitive as far as the entire NFL goes, within its division, it's going to be a dogfight this next season. We really have to see how Houston does with the change in their offensive line, how they can protect Stroud. And the teams are so different. Tennessee has a brand new number 1 pick in their quarterback. The Jacksonville Jaguars have an entire new coaching staff, coaching staff. And they have Travis Hunter, how that's going to play out. And then the Indianapolis Colts are trying to figure out the quarterback situation, but otherwise have a very good team as well. So this could be a very interesting division within itself. The only problem is I don't expect to see more than just whoever wins the division going to the playoffs. I don't see any team from this division making the playoffs as a wild card. But I could be wrong, and but we'll see. But it's going to be a dogfight in the AFC South this upcoming season. All right, well, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I hope you continue to listen. Please hit the like button and subscribe as well. I appreciate that. And also contact me, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, X, at Just the Stats NFL, and let me know if you have any question, comment, or suggestion. I appreciate that. But that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. And until next time, I am out.